tunes, whiskey before breakfast. It's very appropriate for church, don't you think? Spotify and Morrison's Big.
You're not wearing your Irish for that?
No, the Scots don't really do Irish.
Good morning, and happy St. Paddy's Day. Top of the morning to you. And other cultural cliches you pretty much can't get away with any other day. So look at this place, the sun's streaming in, and yet you chose to come today. It's amazing, and I even see a few new faces out there. So welcome. However you found your way here this morning, I hope this service leaves you feeling a couple of inches taller than when you arrived, and a little fuller of heart, and a little lighter of burden. So my name's Bruce, and I'll be your server today. And if I may be so bold as to recommend a starter right off the hop here, I'm going to suggest a song. To sing is to pray twice, as the Irish say. And not just any song. So when I saw this song on the sked, I wasn't that familiar with it, and I said, well, Alison, who's it by? And you said, it's by me. So I'm going to have her tell you a little bit about it before she gets us started with it.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, so as you know, months usually before the service is presented to you, I talk with whoever's planning the service, and talking with the people who will be speaking is one of the enormous privileges of the work that I do, and it never ends being absolutely amazing. And I talked with Bruce, and he talked about this way of, the more perspectives we have on the world and the more different ways that we can see situations, ourselves, and others, the better equipped we are to deal with everything. And I started looking, through the hymn book, next hymn book, pop songs, iTunes, And there was hardly anything really that spoke to specifically what you were thinking about. So I was just sort of sitting there, browsing, and these words kind of came to me. So I wrote them down, which doesn't usually happen, but anyways, so this is the song that I wrote, and pretty soon after the words, I went downstairs, said, Daryl, do you think this is at all worthy of being a hymn? He said, yeah, it's great. Fine. So I went into the sunroom and sat down at the piano, and the next thing I know, there's a melody to it even. So there we go. So that's the song, Let Me Walk With Thee. And I want to say a word about thee, because many of you will go, oh, no, thee means God. But in Quakers, I grew up a Quaker, and with the Quakers, although they don't refer in normal life to each other as thee, when I was at meeting and a child and somebody would stand up to speak, frequently they would refer to thou or thee as being the deepest thou. So when I see the heart in you, I see the essence of you, it is thee that I'm speaking to. So, and the Quakers say there is that of God in everyone, however he may conceive him to be. And that is the idea that as we look to each other, we look to that of God, and that is thee, I speak to thee. So when I refer to this, let me walk with thee, let me see the world as you see, let me know the paths you have trod. Let me walk with thee, let me see the world as you see, let me know the paths you have trod. So I'll sing the first chorus, and then please rise and join with me in the rest of the song. Let me walk with thee, let me see the world as you see, let me know the paths you have trod. Let me walk with thee, let me see the world as you see, let me know the paths you have trod. If you have been shaped by fear and terror, may I be a safe haven for thee. If you have been shaped by hunger or longing, may I offer you food for this journey. Can you walk with me? Can you see the world as I see? Can you know the paths I have trod? Can you walk with me? Can you see the world that I see? Can you know the paths I have trod? We each walk alone on this path of life and have our own struggles to bear. Yet if I can see just for a moment through your eyes, it's joy that our souls will share. Let me walk with thee, let me see the world as you see, let me know the paths you have trod. Let me walk with thee, let me see the world as you see, let me know the paths you have trod. Thank you.
Amazing. A world premiere, I would say. I think that could go places. Thank you so much, Alison. I love it. Again, welcome. We are the North Shore Unitarian Church, where it's our mission to inspire one another to live with depth, meaning, and purpose. In this congregation, we celebrate people from all walks of life, no matter who you are or who you love or what lens you see the world through, we hope you feel at ease in here. You are in the midst of our beloved community, and we are so happy to have you. And as I light the chalice here, one of the oldest rituals of this faith, let me acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional unceded lands of the Coast Salish people, whose rituals preceded ours by many thousands of years. We're grateful for the opportunity to think about what this means and about our role in rewriting a more equitable future. We kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering.
May the light of understanding illuminate our darkness. May the warmth of sharing bring us peace.
And 2 more candles. The first represents, these are the candles of joys and sorrows. The first represents any issues which may be lying heavy on your heart this morning. Know that you don't carry these burdens alone. And on the other side of the ledger, the candle also represents anything positive and hopeful that you can hang on to today to lift your spirits. And last is the candle of global concerns. And these are perhaps better silently considered than spoken aloud. Let's take a moment with this one. Whatever prayer means to you, there's power in engaging in this together. Thank you. And now, one more source of light. This choir that calls itself Vox Lumina, Voices of Light. Francis settled there. Alrighty. So I used to wear contact lenses, and some of you know what this is like. For me, mostly out of vanity, I think, and a little bit out of practicality, because, you can go running or water skiing or whatnot and not worry about your glasses sliding down your nose or you're flying into the lake. But the downside was that you had to clean them every night. And at bedtime, you put them in a little vessel, it looked like a shot glass, with water and a little bit of a chemical to dissolve the proteins. And one morning, after a late night, I groggily padded into the bathroom, parched and thirsty. You know where this is going. Saw a tiny little water glass sitting there and knocked it back. So it turned out it was my only pair of lenses, my last pair, which made life not so great for the next few days while I waited for a replacement to arrive in the mail. So now I'm bumping into stuff, and I'm holding the newspaper right up to my face, and I'm thinking, I won't make this mistake again. Note to self, never run yourself down to one pair of lenses. Stock up. And then I thought, maybe that is what life is about. It's a process of collecting lenses. So, I mean lens, obviously, in a figurative sense now. And it's a lens like a worldview, like a consistent ethic of how to behave and how to think. There's something about humans that makes us want to simplify life into a set of operating instructions, sort of a grand unifying theory to help us make sense of things. And some people call these mental models. I say lenses because it's an easy metaphor to understand. A lens makes you see the world in a particular way. So, for example, you may have a lens called the lens of life lens. And this one's just honor all life. And for you, it might mean thou shalt not kill. That's the bottom line. At every turn, defend life. And not just human life. You don't eat meat. If you're a Jain, you don't even kill mosquitoes. Keep things alive. That's a lens. Okay? Or there's a lens of the greater good. How should we live? Well, if you're a utilitarian philosopher, you say it's all about the greater good. We should always do the thing that benefits the most folks and harms the fewest, right? It's just straight moral math. You'd kill 3 people to save 5. Help more than you hurt. That's a lens. If you're a political animal and progressive, you might see the world through the lens of power, okay? This one says every transaction has a winner and a loser, and an oppressor and an oppressed. Identify who's who, and throw your support behind the underdog. Level out the power, okay? That's a lens, right? If you're a poet, or an artist, or a musician, you might default to the lens of beauty, okay? You see the world through a jeweler's loupe. You appraise every person, place, and thing like it's a gem. It is a gem to you. Beauty defines life. Every act of grace just pops. You notice the helpers who show up after the fire. You notice the daisy poking up through the sidewalk crack. You notice the one little jar of cherries in the fridge full of furry leftovers. You pursue delight and you spread delight. That's a lens, the lens of beauty. Now, some people really live in their bodies. So, have I got my 10,000 steps in yet? How's my blood sugar? What am I desiring right now? What wants to move in me? How are my energy levels? Without a functioning body, the soul can't express itself. So this is a big one for many. It's a big lens, there are a lot of ways to think about our bodies. So there's a great Eduardo Galeano thing. He says that the church says the body is a sin. Science says the body is a machine. Advertising says the body is a business. The body says, I am a fiesta. All right, that's the body lens. Now, if you're a gambler, your go-to lens might be the lens of chance. And here, at every turn, you're wondering, what are the odds of this happening instead of this? So, when Jen's brother was a young man, you haven't heard this story in a long time, right out of uni, he moved from Montreal to Las Vegas for a year, and he got hired by the Stardust on the old strip to set the betting line on NHL hockey games. Because as a Canadian and a hockey player himself, he actually knew more about hockey than pretty much anyone else in Vegas. So he worked there for a year, and he kind of watched the people around him. And he noticed that people who choose to live in Las Vegas, they are just riverboat gamblers to the bone. You know, they're wired to calculate the odds of things, no matter how trivial. So Ian used to tell the story of there'd be two guys standing there, and one notices a couple of ants on the sidewalk. And the first guy says, "I'll bet you that ant makes it to that crack first. $50. You're on." And they watch. And so everything in Vegas shook down to, I wonder what's going to happen next, and how can I make a buck on it? Right. There are also lenses of faith. So if you're a Christian, this could just be what would Jesus do, right? You pass everything through the filter of that before you make any decision. What would Jesus do in this situation? I actually personally think that's a decent lens to have in your repertoire, even if you aren't a Christian, because that gentleman was not a bad role model at all. It's like what the physicist Freeman Dyson used to tell people. He said, "I'm not a believing Christian, but I'm a practicing Christian." Every major faith is a lens. You could say that Buddhism aspires to be a lens of lenslessness, right? Just pure experience, right? Strip away all your filters and you end up with just a sense of being. The philosopher John Gray said, "Leave all your ideologies and religions to one side, and what's left? What's left is a sensation of life, which is a wonderful thing." Anyway, all these lenses, you get the idea. There's no end of possibilities. And I suspect a lot of us in this congregation default to an ethical lens. For some, it'll be a political lens. For a few, I'm pretty sure it might be the lens of beauty. For a few, it'll be the lens of faith. And sort of overarching all of this discussion is a bigger umbrella lens, what anthropologists call a primal world belief. So primal world belief that cuts across cultures and time and all kinds of divides. And primal world beliefs boil down to whether you think the world is basically a good place or a bad place. You know, is it safe for the most part, or is it dangerous? Is it enticing or dull? Is it alive or kind of mechanistic? So your primary world belief determines the answer to this question: is this world worth existing in? Is it a privilege to get to live, or is it more of a curse to have been born? So notice that that's a slightly different question than, is there a God? Because you're not really picking a side here. The primary world belief that, yeah, this is a world worth living in, I think it's one most Unitarians share. It brings us together, whether we're atheists or agnostics or believers. The aliveness of the world is captured by the sense of awe we feel being entwined in its tendrils. Now, in a moment, we're going to try a little exercise. I think you're going to find it fun. But I want to set that up by saying this business of lenses, it's not always a conscious thing. And it's not always clear what lens you're looking through at any one time. You know, there's no cosmic ophthalmologist sitting you down and going, is this better or is this better? You know, it takes a fair bit of self-awareness or a very deliberate plan to ask yourself, okay, so what lens am I using right now? So there's a beautiful, anyone know who Annie Dillard is? Have you read her Pilgrim at Tinker Creek and all of that? So she's got one anthology called Teaching a Stone to Speak. And in it, there's a beautiful essay called Total Eclipse. And some people know it. I see some nods. In it, she describes a trip she took in 1979 to get a perfect view of a solar eclipse. So she and her husband traveled from the east coast of the States to western Washington State near Yakima to see this rare phenomenon. It only happens a few times in a decade. And by the way, if you're watching, it's coming up in about 2.5 weeks here. And so one that's going to be really beautifully visible from the Americas. So if you wanted an excuse to go to Mazatlan or Montreal or maybe not, but Hamilton too. These places are all right in the full path, what they call the path of totality. So, and I think there's a way you can actually, some of the optometrists are giving away little glasses, so you can watch it through that. Anyway, a digression. Annie and her husband now, they arrive in Yakima. They get up in the pre-dawn and they hike to the top of a hill to get a good look at this thing. And as this ancient ritual of nature unfolds in front of her eyes, Annie is trying to get a handle on how she's seeing it. Like, what is happening here? What are my perceptual filters? And she identifies 12 different ways in which she's seeing the eclipse. 12 observational lenses, as she calls them. 12 distinct little Annies taking this thing in. One of them is a, quote, rational, ordinary person. You know, plain old Annie, just a human taxpayer standing on a hill, exposed to this thing, maybe like the way a dog watches a movie or something. It's cool, but it's sort of incomprehensible, right? So that's lens one. Lens two for her is she realized she's seeing this eclipse as a mystic, because that's part of her personality too. She's someone who, quote, believes in what I cannot see. So through this lens, the eclipse is pure magic. It's raising goosebumps on her skin and her scalp. It is a sacred thing. Lens three is metaphor maker, because that's how a writer's mind works. You see something and it immediately reminds you of something else. So a total eclipse is a lens cover. It's a lid on a pot. It's a silencer dialing down the songs of the birds. It's a necklace thrown across the throat of heaven. It's the sun and the moon getting it on, going all the way. Lens four for Annie is the timekeeper lens. In this moment, on this hill, she is a keeper of prehistoric time, bearing witness to this sky show that was happening before there were beings around to observe it, and will still be going on long after we're all dust. At one point, she looks over at her husband, and he is, she says, he is light years away. The sight of him was familiar and wrong, she says. It was something I was remembering from centuries hence, from the other side of death. Now, I'll let you discover for yourself the other 8 lenses that she talks about. Annie Dillard, man, it's good stuff. So one writing teacher I know gives her students an exercise inspired by that essay by Annie. And she says, in 200 words or less, describe something. It could be an eclipse, it could be what you had for breakfast, and then tell me what lens you're using it to see through, seeing it through. And by the way, you can use more than one lens. Just describe the switch as you make it. So that's a super cool thing to try in your own life. I would encourage it. It's something I've actually wanted to do with youth group. It's down on my list. So I tried it myself. I said, okay, I'm gonna think about this, and I managed to identify at least 10 lenses that I use routinely. I won't burden you with all of them, but here are just a few of them that occurred to me. So for me, the dad lens. You know, what would my father do in this situation? That's basically my version of what would Jesus do, because Jesus, you know, my dad was Jesus to me. So whatever he did was probably the right thing. So another lens for me is the parent lens. This is about remembering that there are small people in the vicinity who are watching you like a hawk. So they're noting the choices you make, so don't blow it. You know, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be a little bit mindful that you're modeling something here. Another one for me is the adventure lens. Prefer things that are exciting and unusual and mysterious, even if they're riskier. So this is a win-win way to live. You know, if things go well, that's great, and if things go sideways, well, that's also great because it's a story. You know, drink your contact lenses, and well, you know, maybe you can use that one day in a pulpit far, far away. Okay, here's a quirky one that I realize I use a lot. The lens of ratios. So here you're constantly trying to get the balance right. What's the right ratio of cereal to milk, of walking to running, of reading to writing, of giving to taking, of spending to saving? Strangely, it's amazing how often the correct answer is 3 to 1. The correct ratio is 3:1. I don't know why. And of course, there is the UU lens. And this is one that we all have in our kit bag. So UU's worldview is kind of contained in our 8 principles, but that's almost too much to keep in your head. So I, for myself, shorten it to 3. Be kind, try to make connections, cultivate hope. That's it. For me, that's the nut of it. And again, it takes a bit of doing to identify which lens you're using at any one time, because so much of this is unconscious, right? Things just filter through us, and they land in a way that feels like the truth. Okay, so here, now we're going to try this exercise. Some of you will be familiar with this. It kind of went viral about 5 years ago. Somebody discovered this little social experiment that you can. It's almost like well, I'll show you. It's an audio game. So we're gonna play a clip here, and I hope we can get it coming out the speakers. And I want you to tell me. We'll listen to it twice. This is a person's name, and I want you to tell me what it is that you're hearing. See if we can get it going.
Yeah.
Okay, should we do it one more time, or did you feel like you got it? One more time. Okay, thanks, Annabelle.
Yeah.
All right. What are you hearing?
Laurel. Yuri.
Okay. I'm hearing Laurel. I'm hearing Yuri. Yeri. Okay, but those are quite different things. Okay, so a lot of people, I'm going to say the majority maybe are hearing Laurel. Deanna heard Yeri. Did anyone hear Yanni? Yeah. Okay, amazing. Okay, so
Play it again.
Okay, Lila, I'm just curious, what did you hear? Laurel. You heard Laurel. Okay, well, it blows my theory a little bit. Anyway, so the way this shakes down often is that if you're older than around 50, most people hear Laurel. And that's because as we age, the upper register of what we can perceive above about 12,000 hertz tends to kind of go bye-bye. And that makes the sounds that make Yanni kind of exist in this upper range. But there's this fair sprinkling of people here who heard Yanni, and so it's not necessarily an age thing. It's just it's a basic perception thing. It's like if I ask the question, what name is that voice that we just heard saying? What's the correct answer there? The correct answer is there is no correct answer. It depends, right? Which is absolutely frustrating because you know what you heard, right? You know what you heard. So, I heard something, and Rebecca heard something else, maybe. So, what do we do now? So, this is where collecting lenses can help us out. So, in another version of this experiment that we just did. It's a much more elaborate setup where the experimenter starts tweaking the sounding board, and they play it over and over again, and they bring up the treble until the Laurel people start hearing Yanni too. So it's like trying on another lens. And that's kind of where I'm going with all of this, and why I think this business of lenses is relevant not just to us UUs, but to everyone out there in this increasingly polarized cultural situation. The more lenses we have in our repertoire, the better. The more perspectives we can take on an issue, the sounder our judgment. And that sounds like just an easy thing to say, sweeping generalization, but there's actually tons of data to back this up. So for example, in academia, it turns out that the more culturally diverse the research team that produced a paper, the more original that work is likely to be. And the measurement is the number of times it gets cited by other academics. So there was another cool study done on Wikipedia entries. So Wikipedia is a crowdsourced reference manual. Anyone can jump in, if you're registered as an editor, to edit an entry. And it turns out that Wikipedia entries that have been edited by folks from across the political spectrum are of higher quality, more accurate, more fair, because the thinking is those editors are each other's checks and balances, right? If it were only progressives or only conservatives working on that article, it wouldn't be as strong an article because they wouldn't see each other's blind spots. Do you remember a couple of months ago, Dennis did a presentation on harmonics and sound waves, and he showed a picture of a bridge in Portland that had collapsed because the forces acting on it all synced up in a way that put dangerous stress on the bridge, and it just started to buckle. And if you go online, you can actually see somebody caught video of it, and they call it Galloping Gertie, this bridge, because it started to go like this until it collapsed. And the same thing can happen when soldiers are marching across a bridge in formation. The footsteps sort of create they amplify into a giant shock wave. So soldiers are taught, if you're marching across a bridge, march a little out of step. So that doesn't happen. You don't get a Galloping Gertie situation. And again, that's kind of what we're talking about. When we're all marching in lockstep, we're in trouble. Collective action is a beautiful thing, but there needs to be variation within it. So our man Walt Whitman says, I contain multitudes. But love to claim Walt Whitman as their own. I think he was a Quaker, though, right? But you can see why they want to claim him, because that's kind of a wise thing to say. It's here's our cubism, containing multitudes here, this new way to look at the world where you're multiple perspectives at one time. So imagine being a fly on the wall at your own funeral. People are getting up one by one to talk about you, and each has a different angle on you. The mum, the scholar, the practical joker, the Wordle savant, the caregiver, the boomer, the very tall, moderately coordinated human of Dutch or African or Métis extraction. It all adds up to a picture of you that no single person in the crowd knew in full. Okay, you knew I was going to hit you with a weird word at some point. And where's Hans? You tell me if I'm pronouncing this right. Vielseitigkeit. 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 Well, we all have our way to say it. No, that's excellent. Okay, so broad vision. Yeah, I've heard it described as versatility, well-roundedness, but it literally means you have many lenses that you see the world through. And some of the greatest philosophers have said this is the purpose of life, to investigate as many perspectives as possible. So this is a famous garden in Kyoto, Japan. It's built right next to a Zen temple and attracts pilgrims from all over the world. And the big draw here, and of course you can't really see it in this picture. I couldn't resist the beautiful leaves, so I went with this one. But the big draw is a rock garden. 15 rocks spread out over a patch of white sand about the size of a tennis court. And no one knows why the rocks are arranged the way that they are. No one even knows who the designer was. 300 years later, it remains a great mystery. One theory is that the rocks represent a tiger carrying its cubs across the water. Another theory is the rocks make up the Chinese character for heart. But again, nobody knows. The most distinctive thing about this rock garden is that the 15 rocks have been carefully placed so that no matter where you're standing, there's always at least one rock that you can't see. So people walk around and around, testing this out for themselves, debating what the answer, what is this place? What is the answer to this riddle? Not realizing that the walking around, maybe arm in arm with each other, puzzling it all out, maybe that is the answer to the riddle. Maybe. So that German word I just tried to pronounce so poorly, comes up in the peace literature, right? It describes the ability to actually listen to people whose ideas we disagree with. staying open to the possibility that we could change our beliefs. And this is all on my mind these days because I just got back from a conference in the Bay Area at UCal Berkeley. And this is a project I've been part of for a couple of years now. A bunch of journalists and academics are studying this emerging field called intellectual humility. It's kind of a fancy term, comes out of the positive psychology movement, but it's a simple idea. So intellectual humility is about making a habit of questioning your lens or lenses. It's saying to yourself, especially when you notice yourself gassing on about something, maybe like I am now, wait a sec, you know what? I could be wrong here. And you, my intellectual foe, who I think is an idiot, could actually be right. You don't say that, you just think it. Let's investigate this. Maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle. At best, we're bound to discover, gee, this lens I'm using here is at the very least insufficient. I gotta say, and I'm probably gonna get into trouble for this, but I'm convinced that the whole critical race theory schmozzle could have been headed off if everybody said, you know what, this CRT, this critical race theory, this is interesting. It could be a useful lens to have in the bag, but it can't be my only story. You know, even Cornel West, when a journalist asked him, how should we think about critical race theory? He said, it's one lens. It's one lens among many. You're wise to investigate it. You're unwise to rely on it completely, right? A really beautiful term came up in Berkeley that I hadn't heard before, Socratic humility. So I guess Socrates must have coined it originally, and it got spun out into our era. It basically means a deep curiosity to learn other people's perspectives. So say I'm sitting across from you at Thanksgiving dinner with and your brother's new beau, his name of David, is sitting here, a new entry into the family equation. Different race, age, different identifiers, different faith, plus he looks mad. So part of me is trepidatious to engage with him and I'm on eggshells a little bit here because I don't want to say the wrong thing, you know. There's so many ways I could put my foot in it here. But Socratic's humility says, go for it. Don't pull back, lean in. You want to build the reflex where you actually come to crave these opportunities, the way that sailors marooned at sea crave limes. You know, because these folks have a nutrient that you're missing in your diet, and that's the different experiences that they've had in their lives. They have these other lenses, and now you have a chance to peer through these lenses too, just by listening. So it's like, tell me what things look like from your perspective as an individual and as a member of these groups that I don't belong to. Have you heard about this concept of purple places? Anybody? So purple places are great spots to collect lenses. Purple places are folks, I should say this is a kind of an American construction, you'll see why in a sec. Purple places are where folks from all different persuasions gather. So in the States, Republicans are red and Democrats are blue. So places where you find both Republicans and Democrats are purple because you get both, right? So purple places can be purple politically, philosophically, religiously. I would say Mathers Avenue, here where we are, is a purple street, because how many faiths would you find along here, cheap by jaw, like 5 or 6, I think. It's a purple street. North Shore Archery Club, where Lila goes on Saturday mornings to do archery, is a purple place, we've noticed. Age range is about 14 to 85, all political stripes. You know, there are peaceniks and hunters, and everyone's getting on like a house on fire because they're there for this other reason, to shoot arrows at a target, right? And this place, North Shore Unitarian Church, should be a purple place. And on its good days, it is. It's a purple place. Okay, one last story that I heard in Berkeley. It involved a performer and a trans activist named Alok, let's see if I get this pronounced right, Alok Vaid Menon. So Alok's story was, They'd just given a keynote speech in Melbourne, and it had gone great. And they were riding the subway home, feeling like $1 million. And then a stranger walked right up and punched them in the face so hard it basically broke their face, sent them to hospital for weeks. And they suffered severe PTSD. They were afraid to go outside. They were in a dark place for a long, long time. And they'd realized they switched out their primal global beliefs from the world is fun and safe to the world is dangerous and awful. But eventually, they realized that the way out was to kind of voluntarily lean into the world of their aggressor. And they wrote a new piece, a new little bit, called Love Letter to the Guy Who Bashed Me. And they returned to Melbourne, the scene of the crime, and they performed the piece, and it worked. It was amazing. And I released myself from bitterness, they said. And this new lens that Alok wears now, they call it the lens of hopefulness. I've even heard them say the lens of radical hopelessness. When I ride the subway now, they said, there are two voices in my head. One is, someone's going to assault me today. And the other is, someone's going to compliment me today. And my mission is to let the second voice be heard. Radical hopefulness. So these stories of intellectual humility and collecting lenses, they are super in our wheelhouse, I believe, as Unitarians. So many of the principles are in there. So principle number 1, respecting the inherent worth and dignity of all humans. Principle 3 is in there, encouraging each other's spiritual growth. Principle 4, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Principle 5, respecting the democratic process. Principle 8, actively working out to ferret bias and oppression. There's a phrase, seeing with 2 eyes, trying to view things with settler eyes and indigenous eyes at the same time. It's not easy, but that's the work. And I actually think principle 2 is baked into all this as well, kindness and compassion. There's a writer named Maria Popova who was with us in Berkeley last time, sadly not this time, and she said one measure of kindness might be the unwillingness to crush complexity into a single category. So how is that kindness? Well, it's a particular kind of kindness, she said. It's the kindness inherent in looking past labels. The kindness inherent in looking past labels. Yeah, I'm here for that. I think we all are. May I ask the ushers to please come forward.
Flows and flows of angel hair, and ice cream castles in the air, and feather canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, and now they only belong to the sky.
For all the gifts you bring to this community, our most sincere thanks. And I should say that it was up on the slide, but for the month of March, 100% of our collection goes to the youth program at Hollyburn Community Society. These folks support youth emergency services and transitional housing, as well as services to get youth back on their feet and having a safe and dignified life. So thank you again for that. And now we have some announcements. I guess I'm hanging on to that money a little too tightly there. Alrighty, so following the service, please join us downstairs for lunch. Diana's laid out another good one. And by the way, if you are new here, I encourage you to gravitate to the table with the white tablecloth. We're all a friendly bunch, but the people at the table are officially designated to be super friendly, and they were adept at answering your questions about what this UU thing is all about. And we'd be happy to have you down there. Now, next week, Mitch, Maury and the Reb, a service inspired by the work of Mitch Ablum. Is it Album or Ablum? Ablum, E.B. The newspaper columnist turned sage, I would say. It's a service about faith, which is a loaded word for Unitarians sometimes. Leslie Gibbons and Rebecca Lindley will explore what it means for some of us and how we can douse for it in unlikely places. And after next week's service, please hang around for a special surprise. I'm sworn to secrecy about this. I'm not sure it's even legal what's planned, but you should hang around for it because it'll be good. And to bring us home, well, you know what? We were going to segue into the Joni Mitchell, which we did, and now I think maybe I'm looking at the clock. Maybe it's time to extinguish the flame. And I have a little blessing at the end of this, so don't dash off immediately. But let's extinguish our flame. We extinguish this flame. The world calls us to live with depth, meaning, and purpose.
We go forth with courage and love.
And finally, on this St. Patrick's Day, a few sublime words of blessing by the poet John O'Donohue. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of ancestors be yours. And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. Go out into the world in peace. Spread the very best of what's in you today. Honor your ancestors and other people's ancestors. And I thank you so much for coming. Circle round.